Chronicles chapter 13. I'm reading from the New Living Translation. I'm going to read the entire chapter. And it says, David consulted with all his officials, including the generals and captains of his army. Then he addressed the entire assembly of Israel as follows. If you approve, and if it is the will of the Lord our God, let us send messages to all the Israelites throughout the land, including the priests and Levites in their towns and pasture lands. Let us invite them to come and join us. Verse 3, it is time to bring back the ark of our God, for we neglected it during the reign of Saul. The whole assembly agreed to this, for the people could see it was the right thing to do. So David summoned all Israel from the Shihor brook of Egypt in the south, all the way to the town of Lebo-Hamath in the north, to join in bringing the ark of God from Kiriath-Jearim. Then David and all Israel went to Baalah of Judah, also called Kiriath-Jearim, to bring back the ark of God, which bears the name of the Lord, who is enthroned between the cherubim. Verse 7, they placed the ark of God on a new cart and brought it from Abinadab's house. Uzzah and Ahio were guiding the cart. David and all Israel were celebrating before God with all their might, singing songs and playing all kinds of musical instruments, lyres and harps, tambourines, cymbals, and trumpets. Verse 9, but when they arrived at the threshing floor of Nathan, the oxen stumbled, and Uzzah reached out his hand to steady the ark. Then the Lord's anger was aroused against Uzzah, and he struck him dead because he had laid his hand on the ark. So Uzzah died there in the presence of God. Verse 11, David was angry because the Lord's anger had burst out against Uzzah. He named that place Perez Uzzah, which means to burst out against Uzzah, as it is still called today. Verse 12, now David was now afraid of God, and he asked, how can I ever bring the ark of God back into my care? So David did not move the ark into the city of David. Instead, he took it to the house of Obed-Edom of Gath. The ark of God remained there in Obed-Edom's house for 3 months, and the Lord blessed the household of Obed-Edom and everything he owned. Now we will move to 2 Samuel chapter 6. 2 Samuel chapter 6. It's a different accounting of the same event. And I'm going to read verses 12 through 15. Then King David was told the Lord had blessed Obed-Edom's household and everything he has because of the ark of God. So David went there and brought the ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom to the city of David with a great celebration. After the men who were carrying the ark of the Lord had gone 6 steps, David sacrificed a bull and a fattened calf. And David danced before the Lord with all his might, wearing a priestly garment. So David and all the people of Israel brought up the ark of the Lord with shouts of joy and the blowing of ram's horns. So today for a little bit I want to talk to you about when we disagree with God. When we disagree with God. And the first I want to give us a little bit of history about where we find David. At this point, when we meet David in 1 Chronicles chapter 13, he had just been appointed king in the previous chapter. And at this point, he had been fighting wars and he had won. We know, maybe we don't, that Saul had been trying to kill him. And so he had been running from Saul, and Saul was the king, and so he was trying to, David knew that he was anointed king, he just hadn't been appointed yet. And so he was dealing with the fact that Saul wanted him dead, but he was obeying God anyway. He was still going to do what God said. He wasn't going to try and kill him. He could have, he had opportunity, but he wasn't going to. And at that point, when Saul was king, the Philistines had taken charge of the Ark of the Covenant. And some of us may know the story about Dagon, how they had a god who fell dead in front of the Ark of the Covenant because he, of course, could not stand in the presence of God. And so the Philistines said, get rid of this Ark of the Covenant. We don't want it here because there's some power attached to that, and we don't like it. And so they took it and left it over in Kiriath-Jearim. And so at that point, it was at Abinadab's house for at least 20 years. The presence of God was not in his kingdom for at least 20 years. It was at someone else's house. Wow. And so David's first order of business, when he got ready to become king, his first order of business was he wanted God back in the kingdom. He was like, let's do this thing. God been gone for a while, so let's go and bring him back. So his first thing that he wanted to do was to get God back where he rightfully belonged. And so the title of our message today, When We Disagree with God, is kind of a challenge because none of us wants to admit that we disagree with God. We would like to say that I always agree with God, that I know he's right, and that because I know he's right and his word is true and it's forever settled, that I'm always willing to obey and do what it is that he has to say. But if we're honest with ourselves, we disagree with God. I want to define what the word disagree means. It means to have different ideas or opinions, but it also means to be unlike each other. When we disagree with God, we have another opinion of how he ought to do things. We have another idea about how he ought to handle my situation because it is so unique, because it is mine. I know what you have done for others, and I hear them testify, and I hear what you have said, Lord, but my situation, the way that my life is set up is that I need you to work it out this way. See, we have a different opinion about God. The other definition is that we're unlike, to be unlike each other. Now, true, God is unlike us, and thank God for that, because he's just and he's sovereign and he does things decently and in order, but we're also unlike him. That's right. And that is where we find David in this situation. There are things that David does that God showed me through this chapter. I've read this so many times. I've heard this passage preached so much that when God was giving it to me during the fast, I said, oh, okay, well, I'll read it, I'll do it, and I'll preach from it if that's what you want me to do. But what he began to show me was that there are characteristics of disagreement that David began to show that we sometimes have to watch for ourselves. The first characteristic of disagreement is that it's a derivative of distance. And what that means is the farther away that I am from Sister Julian, the less I'm going to agree with her. Because I can't see what she's doing, I can't hear what she's saying. The Ark of the Covenant was just 9 miles away. Come on. But it was there for over 20 years. Wow. Come on. There was a problem that David faced. In verse number 2, David says, if you approve, now he's talking to the people, if you approve, and if it's the will of God, let's do this. Our first problem here is that David didn't consult God first. David talked to the people and said, if it's good to you, if it sounds good to you, if I get a consensus of the people that I'm serving, if you all think that it's a good idea, and if it's the will of God, then let's go ahead and do this thing. As we proceed through the chapter, we find out that the people thought it was a good idea. Because who wouldn't think it was a good idea to bring God back into their kingdom, into their presence? Who would think it was bad to bring the ark back to where it rightfully belonged, to the people who he had saved and delivered and brought through so much? Of course, that the ark should be here. The problem isn't with what David wanted to do. The problem is he didn't wait for God to answer. David said, if you approve and it's the will of the Lord our God, let's send messages to all the Israelites throughout the land. Let's invite them to come. It's time to bring the ark back. And so verse 4 says, the whole assembly agreed to this for the people to see it was the right thing to do. Then verse 5 says, so David summoned all Israel. It doesn't say so David went and sought God. It says so he summoned everybody. See, there's a problem that begins to happen when God is far away from us. We don't go looking for him. When he's not near and close by, and we haven't been in church like we're supposed to, and we haven't been reading our Bible, and we haven't been praying, and we haven't been fasting, so we haven't been close enough to him. We don't think to consult him until afterwards when things have gone awry and we need him to be the cleanup woman. Sometimes we get off course and we allow the distance that we have created to keep him behind us
Wow.
as an
My
afterthought.
Help us,
See, he
God.
said, if it's the will of God. See, we say the right thing.
Come on.
We'll say, if God's willing, I'm going to do this. But do we ask God if he's willing?
Wow.
Do we say, God, now that I've put it out there that I'm waiting on God, do I talk to him? Or do I just move because he's taking too long? David didn't even give God the luxury of the time to ask. He didn't let him ask. David just moved because it was the right thing to do. We have to be careful that we do the right thing the right way.
Yeah.
The ends do not justify the means.
That's right.
God had already put out in Numbers, which we'll get to after, that there was a certain way that the ark had to be carried.
That's right.
No one was to touch it.
That's right.
The Levites were supposed to bear it on their shoulders on poles. It wasn't to be touched. David got ahead of himself.
Yes.
The second characteristic of disagreement is that it develops into disregard for rules. When I don't agree with you, I don't really care what it is that you have to say. See, and I discovered this about myself when I moved away from college, away 850 miles from my mama. There were things that I just didn't like that she had told me to do, so when I got on my own, I just did what I wanted to do. See, that is what disagreement will do. It'll cause you to disregard good common sense, good things that are put in place, things that you've been taught, things that you know that are true. It'll cause you to disregard the rules. The people of God at this point have been given the commandments. Moses had been given the law. It had been passed down as we've been studying for the past couple of years. God kept reminding them, rehearse this in your mind.
Yes.
Remember the word of God that I have given to you. And a part of that word that they were to remember was that nobody was to touch the ark and that it was to be carried a certain way. But at this point, what happened is they saw what the Philistines did. When the Philistines moved the Ark of the Covenant, they put it on a cart. Nothing happened to them. But God wasn't their God.
Wow.
And he hadn't given them the charge, don't touch it.
All right.
We'll come back to that. So the people sought, instead of doing what God said to do, they imitated what the other people were doing. How often is it that we, instead of doing what God says, because it's inconvenient or it makes us look awkward, do we begin to do what other people are doing around us? Do we begin to fit in with the crowd? Because we don't want to be that weird one. We don't want to be the one that everybody's looking at wondering, well, what's wrong with her? And why she look like that? And why she dressed like that? And why she don't want to hang out with us? She thinks she's too good. All of these things that we don't want to do, so we tend to go along with. Just even our silence, even if we don't do it, we don't say anything against it.
Yes.
I learned a long time ago that silence is just like approval.
Yeah.
Nobody knows the difference. You ain't say nothing. If you didn't like it, you didn't say anything. So at this point, the people of God began to do what the Philistines did with the ark.
Jesus. Amen.
We must walk by the rule, not by the example.
Wow. Yes.
When it varies from the rule. When there's a rule in place, but somebody else gets away with doing it their way, we don't get to follow their way.
That's right.
When the rule has been established.
That's right.
I don't care how many people that say they're saved do certain things. That don't excuse me. I don't have the right to then say, but my pastor, he always doing it. But you see, she's the prayer person and she doing it. She be leading praise and worship and she always over here such and such. When the rule has been established, we cannot be excused by a misexample. We are held accountable to God by the rules.
Right.
The third step, the third characteristic of what disagreement might do is that it creates an atmosphere of disobedience. See, I disagree with God. He's been this far away from me. Mind you, for 20 plus years, he's been over there. So now I've been left to my own devices for 20-something years. I didn't have to consult nobody. I didn't have to ask nobody no questions. I just move how I want to move when I want to move.
Just like that,
See, now the problem has become, have we ever considered the fact, because we love to dog Uzzah because he knew better. He knew that he wasn't supposed to touch it. All of that is true. But have we considered that David created an atmosphere of disobedience because he didn't consult God in the first place? Of how he was supposed to move this ark? Could it be that people are more comfortable around you because y'all are alike? Could it be that people want to be more close to me now? People that I think have an issue with God, people that I've known to be disobedient, who I've known to be outside of the will of God, now they want to be close with me because, girl, you understand. They want to call me and talk to me on the phone because you get me. You understand. I don't have to pretend with you. I can be all the way real, girl. I can keep 100. Can we think about why all of a sudden a person wants to be close to me? Why all of a sudden a person identifies with me? Check what's going on in our atmosphere. Have we created a place that they feel comfortable disobeying God, where they feel like there's no checking, there's no challenge here. I know that anything goes when I come around you. Is there a reason why certain people are now drawn to you? Is there a reason? Have you created an atmosphere of disobedience?
Wow. Good word.
Point number 4. Characteristics of disagreement. It discredits and doubts God. Now, we know that David is a prime example of knowing what God can do. God, he killed Goliath. David wrestled with some bears and some lions out there when he was out there tending sheep. God, he kept him from being killed by Saul. David had history, as Pastor likes to say, with God. David knew some stuff about God. But David got angry in verse 11. It says David was angry because the Lord's anger had burst out against Uzzah. David got angry with God because God did what he said he was going to do. How often is it that we push God to the limits, and we push him and we push him, and then when he finally says enough is enough, we have the audacity to take our ball and go home. God, I ain't coming back to church. Don't tell the people to call me. I ain't calling nobody. I ain't answering no phone. I'm not going back out there. I'm not paying no tithe. I'm not doing nothing because all of a sudden now you call my bluff. Now all of a sudden my mercy has run out. Now all of a sudden you tired of dealing with me and I have to pay the piper. Now I'm mad. How dare you, God, judge me in my sin when you've given me all this time to get it together? How dare you, God, tell me I'm wrong when I knew it all along, when I had the Bible, when I had a pastor, when I had somebody call me and say they were praying for me, when I got a text message asking how I'm doing? How dare you call me out on my stuff? You can't judge me. Don't be. How dare you be angry? You killed this man and God, we were up here giving you praise.
Oh my God.
Verse 8 says, David and all Israel were celebrating before God with all their might, singing songs and playing all kinds of musical instruments, giving God praise, and right in the middle of that praise, God killed somebody. We can't praise over sin.
Jesus.
Praising over, giving God praise while living in sin. Yes, everything that has breath will praise the Lord. Please understand, I know that. But this right here is something different.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm in the middle of wrongdoing. I'm distant from God because he's been over there. I'm not paying him any mind. I didn't consult him before I got on this wrong path. And now I'm praising him because I'm doing the right thing. Doing right on top of wrong isn't going to fix the wrong.
That's right.
So David got upset. He was angry with God. And then the next thing that comes out of his mouth is, verse 12 says, David was now afraid of God, and he asked, how can I ever bring the ark of God back into my care? How can he ever bring God's presence back? This is the man who knew that God was a savior, who knew that God had kept his life, who knew that God enabled him to beat a giant, who knew that God had kept him in the wilderness, who knew that God allowed him to become king at this point. How can I ever bring him back? One of the other characteristics of disagreement is it'll cause us to start acting like we don't have good sense.
Amen.
How does that make sense that now I'm wondering how can I ever bring God back how will I ever get God back? I don't even know if I'm afraid, God. I'm afraid of you because now you're going to kill this man and I don't know how you're going to act when I get you back over here. Why am I going to come and ask you for forgiveness and ask you to help me and bring you back into my life when you just killed somebody? When you just judged me for my wrong? When I'm sitting over here on the backside of this mountain because I disobeyed you, how am I going to bring you back and expect for you to be the God you're supposed to be? Sin always causes man to fear. We see that David said he was afraid of God. We go back to Adam and Eve, they were afraid. So they made some clothes out of some leaves. See, when we begin to sin and we know we're about to get caught in some mess, we get afraid now. We get afraid and we're like, okay, now wait a minute now. Now God, wait a minute now, Lord, you full of mercy and you full of grace, and oh Lord, our Father, like, please be merciful. David was afraid. But that fear caused him to say, I don't know if I can ever bring him back. What kind of life would we be if we don't have God in us? What kind of person would we be without God? How could we live? Who would we be without the mercy of God? The fifth and final characteristic that I'm going to talk about, what disagreement does, is it diverts and delays our blessing. When we disagree with God, our blessing is diverted and it's delayed.
My God. Thank you, Jesus.
Verse 13, so David did not move the ark into the city of David. Instead, he took it to the house of Obed-Edom of Gath. The ark of God remained there in Obed-Edom's house for 3 months, and the Lord blessed the household of Obed-Edom and everything he owned. Now remember, at the beginning of this, David said the thing to do was to bring God back. Now, not only did he not bring him back, he sent him away. He put him somewhere else. How often is it that we push God off? That's for you. It's okay if you live that way. It's good for the pastor. He's supposed to fast. I ain't supposed to do all that. That's good for you because you be praying and you close to God. Yeah, that's good for you. You leave God over there. Don't call me. I'll call you if I need to come to church. I'm not really pressed about being there. So I'll get back around to it. We put our Bible somewhere where we can't read it. We delete the app off our phone. We don't pray no more. These types of things we divert and push God away. So then he puts the ark in Obed-Edom's house. Obed-Edom is an innocent bystander. Has nothing to do with anything except that he was blessed because God showed up in his house. David sent his blessing away. It sounds like something crazy. Who would ever send their blessing away? If we know that God is the blesser, why would we push him away? Because we disagree with him. We disagree with him. He ain't doing what I want him to do, so I don't want him around right now. But God is the same wherever he is. His presence was going to come in to Israel and bless it. It went in Obed-Edom's house and blessed Obed-Edom. God is the same. See, the fact that God is God doesn't require our agreement. God's goddom, if that's a word, which I know it's not, does not depend upon whether I agree with him. The truth don't need no cosign. I'm a watcher. He don't need no cosign. He don't need us to agree. We don't have to have a consensus. God don't need a committee to be God. He's God. So when he went to Obed-Edom's house, he was God. When he was at Abinadab's house, he was God. When he's in VFCC, he's God. He don't need us to allow him to be. He's God all by himself. So when he was in Obed-Edom's house for them 3 months, Obed-Edom was blessed.
Yes, he was.
He was blessed. So in 2 Samuel, we see the continuation of where we started, and we hear that somebody got word back to David that Obed-Edom is getting blessed down there. You put that ark down over there in Obed-Edom's house, and Obed-Edom is blessed. Do you hear me? God is doing things. Because when God does something, it travels. It can't stay still. Even if we don't tell it, somebody else going to tell it. You know, our testimony, God's power, it makes room. Remember in the New Testament when Jesus told him, now don't go your way and don't tell nobody that this happened to you. The first thing the man did was run and tell everybody he could tell. Because when God does something for you, and it's the last thing you got to go tell somebody about it. And so the word got back to David. some blessings happening at Obed-Edom's house.
My God.
Verse 12 of 2 Samuel chapter 6 says, so David went there and brought the ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom to the city of David with a great celebration. He wasn't scared no more. See, he began to come to himself. God is just. I don't just praise God. He's not just God in the good times. He's God when he's dealing with me. He's God when he's chastising me. He's God at all times. And so David came to himself and said, hold up, let me go get that. We need that over here. Now, I'm going to go and get it. And then down in 1 Chronicles 15, it goes on to tell us about how David said to the priests, you are the leaders of the Levite family. You must purify yourselves and all your fellow Levites so you can bring the ark of the Lord, the God of Israel, to the place I prepared for it. Because you Levites did not carry the ark the first time, the anger of the Lord burst out against us. We failed to ask God how to move it properly. So the priests and the Levites purified themselves in order to bring the ark of the Lord, the God of Israel, to Jerusalem. Then the Levites carried the ark of the Lord on their shoulders with its carrying poles, just as the Lord had instructed Moses. See, what happened was David said, oh, okay, all this time I done sat over here and let my blessings sit over here. I've come to myself and I've realized that I didn't ask God how I'm supposed to do this thing, but this time when we go get this right here, we're going to do it the right way. How do we get back into agreement with God? We stop and we go back to where we left. Let's go back to where I left you. Let's go back to where I sent you to. God, I'm so sorry that it was that I got beside myself and I allowed myself to put you aside. How I stopped going to church, how I stopped praying, how I stopped reading, how I stopped doing what I knew to do. I'm going to go back to where I left you. See, sometimes we get to the point where, God, you need to come get me. No, we need to go back. He has been faithful. He has been steadfast. He is standing in the same place waiting for us to come back. We are the ones who left. We're the ones who walked away. He is the one who's married to the backslider. He's the one who's standing there always waiting for us. We're the ones who got big-headed and want to disagree with God and walk away and leave him, and then we want him to come get us on top of it. Go back to where we left him.
Wow.
Go back to where we left him, VFCC. Where did we leave him? Where did we start thinking that we had an idea that was better than him? Where did we get off to the point where we're like, God, I got a better idea. I hear that suggestion. I'll take that under advisement. But what I want to do right here and right now is A, B, C, and D. Go back to where we left him and build up from there. The thing that happened is when David and them went back to Obed-Edom's house and got it, we know this part where as they were coming back, David danced out his clothes because he was so excited that he had gotten God's presence back. The thing that we need to notice about God is that he was still there, waiting for David to do the right thing. Once David came back, it wasn't that God said, now that you bring me back, I'm not going to work for you. I'm not going to bless you. I'm not going to be here. I'm the same God all the time. No matter where you push me off to, when you come back to me, I'm the same. I'm the same. I'm the same. So VFCC, go back to where we left God. Stop disagreeing with him. He knows the end from the beginning. He sees where it is that we're trying to get to. He knows the best way. So don't allow distance to come. I sent a text out to the women not too long ago about closing the gap. Don't let that much distance get between us and God, where we can't see him now. I can't hear him now. I don't know where he is. God, where are you? Close the gap. Shut the distance down, because that's where the beginning of problems come, when I can't find God, where I'm not seeking him. I can't hear him. I don't feel his presence no more. This isn't so, I'm not growing over there. I can't grow there. They ain't saying nothing over there. Is it that? Or are we too far? Have we gotten so far? We missed one Bible study, okay. The next month we done missed 3. Next year we realized I ain't been to church in a year. How does that happen? Distance. David said, it's time to bring God back. It's time to get him back. We've pushed him out. We let him. I'm going to read it because what he says is powerful. 1 Chronicles 13, it says in verse 3, it is time to bring back the ark of our God, for we neglected it during the reign of Saul. We neglected God. Do we neglect God? Do we take care of our relationship with him? When he wants to talk, do we listen? When he sends a word through pastor when he's preaching, elder when he's teaching Sunday school or Bible study, are we listening? Do we neglect God? Do we spend any time other than blessing our food with God? Singing Jesus Love Me with our child if they ask us? Do we neglect God? Every moment that we don't spend doing what he said for us to do, we're in disagreement, disobedience, and we're placing distance. How do we expect God to be in the middle of our situation when we have pushed him over there? When we've left him back there for months on end? When we don't know the last time that we've heard from him? When we can't remember the last thing that we heard God say? We don't have the right to disagree with God. We don't have the right to disagree with him. Who are we? The word says, for it is he who has made us, not we ourselves. How in the world am I going to argue with the person who made me? How is he going to tell me what I need to do next? And God, I'm seeking you. I want to know the right thing to do. God, I don't want to move one step without you. Then 3 miles down the road, we turn around like, God, where we at? Where we left him. I want to encourage us today. Psalms 33:4 says, for the word of the Lord holds true, and we can trust everything he does. Yes. For the word of the Lord holds true, and we can trust everything he does. Yes. Then Job 22:21. This is one of Job's friends who was speaking with Job, and the conversation and the context doesn't fit, but this verse is very applicable to me for us today. It says, agree with God, and you will have peace. Then things will go well for you.
Yes, Lord. Wow.
Job 22:21, agree with God, and you will have peace.
Thank you.
Then things will go well for you. Is some of the problem that we're having that we haven't agreed with God? Do we not agree with God about who he says we are? Is that some of the problem that we're having with an identity crisis? I don't know who I am. Who do God say you are? Are we disagreeing with him with that?
Jesus.
Are we disagreeing with where he says for us to be? With the life he has planned for us? With the task that he's assigned to us? Are we disagreeing because it's my life? I get to choose. I like doing this. I don't want to be no missionary. And I mean in the real sense of the word missionary.
Yes.
I don't want to do that. I don't want to be no evangelist. Somebody say something to me, I wear a shirt that say God is love or something. I wear a t-shirt. I don't want to tell nobody nothing about God. Are we disagreeing with who God says that we are? About what our assignment is for our life? About living holy? About being obedient? About trusting him for our very next breath? About letting tomorrow worry about itself? Because you got enough for today. If we notice God's mercies are new every morning, that means you got enough for today. And what you need for tomorrow, if you get to tomorrow, will be there waiting on you.
Yes. Wow.
I'm encouraging us today to agree with God.
Yes.
Agree with God.
Agree with him.
Job said things will go well for you. You'll be at peace. Your mind won't be running. You won't get these headaches. You won't be stressed out because I just agree with God.
Yeah.
I agree with him in that I don't have any other opinion. And I agree with him in that I'm trying to be like him. If we're alike, I can't argue with you because then it's like arguing with myself.
Yeah.
See, the closer we get to him, the more like him we'll become.
Yes. Amen.
The more unable we'll be to disagree. Because it'll be like split personalities. Because I'm so much like him that it's like I'm not agreeing with myself. So I encourage you today, agree with God. Don't allow these things to happen and we feel a way about what God is doing and how he's responding and he hasn't saved this person or he hasn't gotten this person together for doing you wrong. That's God's business. Just agree with him.
Agree with him.
Agree with him.
Amen.
We're standing.
Amen.
Coming into agreement with God is going to cause us to submit to him.
Thank you, Lord.
It's going to cause us to have to surrender. And I heard that during prayer. It's going to cause us to have to relinquish our control over our life.
Yes, God.
It's going to cause us to have to say, God, whatever.
Whatever.
Because you really do know best. It's not just something to say. It's true. Because we don't know what's headed for us tomorrow. We don't know what's happening this afternoon. We don't know if we could go right out here and try to turn right down here and get hit by a car. We don't know. And I'm not saying any of this to scare anybody, but the truth is we don't know.
We don't know. We don't know.
But God knows.
Yes.
So it will behoove us to agree with him.
Yes.
To not be saying, God, well, once you do A, B, C, D, E, and F, then I'll agree with you. We may not get there. Our grace may stop at A. So let's agree with God, with what he's saying for our life, with what he has placed in our heart, with what he gives our pastor to preach to us, elder to teach us, what you hear when you're praying, when some random person says something to you that sounds just like God. Agree with them. Don't fight and say, I got this. I know how this is supposed to work. I've got this in my hands. I'm the creator of my own destiny. Watch that stuff. Watch that. I'm the creator of my own and I'm forging my own. We need to seek God and agree with him. We need to agree with him. If there's anybody